Thank you, Edouard. So I will continue here on how to overcome those limitations. And during this section, so we'll divide the talk on 3 parts and start with first the measurement of the performance. And this will start with all the traditional way of comparing our model outputs to a ground truth. Okay, a ground truth meaning that it must be created manually by experts so as to compare what the model is predicting to the truth. And so this has 2 main advantages that we can see here below. The first one being, so having, thanks to this, overall metrics, okay, quantitative metrics, that can be used to analyze our results. Okay, so what you see here is the example that we share. We applied GPT to do some labeling on a classification task. Okay, this one is a sentiment analysis from IMDb movie reviews, and we can output from our tests an F1 score that enables us to achieve a good certainty of how our model is performing. Here we have 94% of performance. Okay. So this is the first element. And the second one is the possibility, thanks to this, to deep dive into potential disagreements, to understand them and potentially solve them. Okay. And so we'll focus now on this second element with another use case, which is a brand classification use case. So that you see here in the slide. So you see that we have company information on the left. So we have a company name, we have its description associated to it. And our goal here is to classify those information into one of those 13 target classes that we have on the right. And to do this, we will leverage GPT labeling, leveraging our traditional prompt to do some classification. And so once we have done this automated labeling, automated classification of the company names, the second step here would be to analyze the quality and compare what our model has been predicting to a test set. And this, we can do it in KDE. So we have our project configured here. We see that we have our assets. So our company name, the description, and the class. What we see in our project is that we have 200, a bit more than 200 elements labeled. We have a ground truth that has been done by Michael, and then our default prompt, the output of GPT. If we go to our Explore tab, we can deep dive, switch from one asset to the other to compare if they agree or not. We see that we have this consensus metrics that enables us to directly assess if the model is in line with our ground truth. Further on, we can even filter according to this consensus metric so as to deep dive only on the elements on which our model doesn't agree with the ground truth. For example, here, we see that the ground truth is flagged as healthcare, while our model flagged this one as professional services. So we have the full ability here to correct what the model has been producing. Later on, you can even have a more broad view on what the model is producing by overall macro metrics on how the model is performing at each category. So we see here that for each of those categories, we have the overall agreement between the model, so GPT in that case, and our ground truth. Here we can navigate to healthcare to assess whether or not our model does agree, and we see indeed we have a lot of 100%, a lot of agreement between our model and the ground truth. And so this is a good first step. We have those metrics. We are able to compare what the model is predicting, do a diagnostic, and potentially iterate. But then, depending on the situation, depending on the strategies that you are implementing, you may need to go further and leverage some advanced quality performance metrics, depending on the situation that you have. Okay, and for this, we list here various metrics that can be leveraged. So distances, edit semantic distances that can be computed between various model outputs, okay, so as to compare them. Then you have NLP-specific metrics that depend on the task that can be used to assess the quality of a translation or summarization task. Or even going further, analyzing the intrinsic quality of a given prompt with prompt error risk metrics that can be derived from the log probes of various outputs that the model is giving. And so what's interesting here is that if you have this kind of metrics implemented at the project level, you can implement them into a QA workflow by automating the filtering out of potential errors. And so typically, this is something that can be done in Kili with the plugin features that is described broadly in the documentation and in previous webinars. But globally, as a conclusion here, so the goal is that we have access to a tangible metric that enables to provide a diagnostic, to do a diagnostic, and potentially filter out errors so as to correct them and iterate. But this is not enough, because when we have this diagnostic done, the next step would be to adapt, okay? And one way to adapt our strategy is to fine-tune our model, meaning to adapt the model that we have to our actual context. And in this section, we'll tackle 3 elements, so 3 things different. The first one would be the downstream filtering, meaning the capability to filter the model responses to send only correct ones to the end users. Second part will tackle the move from a general model to a very specific model after fine-tuning, adapting the model weights on highly curated and specific data. And lastly, we'll discuss about the fact to rely on embeddings, so meaning use the representation that the model generates so as to learn from it and build our application. And so, starting with downstream filtering that you have here. So basically, downstream filtering is the technique that was used to turn GPT into ChatGPT, so specifying the very large model that Edouard described before to a given task. And so the entire process is described here in details in the OpenAI paper, and was actually also described during 2 webinars ago. It relies on 3 steps, basically. First one being to collect demonstration data to train a dedicated policy in a supervised way. Then use a prompt to generate several model outputs that can then be ranked by a manual labeler from the worst one to the best one, okay? And finally, optimize the policy using, against the reward model, using some reinforcement learning techniques, okay? And so this is, a process that has proven its capabilities in improving, specifying a large model to a given task, and that relies a lot on manual labeling, on human raters. For example, in the second step, as you see here, we can see in Kili, so as to rank different model outputs from the best to the worst answer. But so when we are here, the thing is that, so this downstream filtering relies a lot on, quite a complex process, and it provides very cool outputs as ChatGPT, but we can anticipate that it takes quite a lot of energy to set up and can be quite complex, okay? So alternatively, the second option will be to rely on those large existing models and work on adapting them to a specific task by fine-tuning them, okay? And this is what you see in the graph that is described below, where we explain how to fine-tune a given model. So it can be applied on any foundation model. You see those ones here. Or for computer vision, you have SAM. We described it before. You have the Dino model that we'll talk about right after. You have the same principle that can be applied for natural language processing models like BERT, like GPT. The principle is to take those models, input next to it a highly curated data set with some energy that needs to be put in curating this data so that it will correctly be used to make the model specific on the given task, okay? And so in that case, the value of the data is very important for the model to learn correctly and avoid a situation where it forgets what it had learned before. And then transform this model into a specific model. And so the idea for now is to illustrate this on a given task. Okay. And so we discussed before GPT and a lot of NLP use case, but this time we'll do it on a computer vision use case. And for this, we will leverage Dino V2, which is a model that was released by Meta, to realize a defect detection classification task. So the task that you see on the left, where you have those images without defects. And you can see that in some of these images, we have small defects, like some small pinholes in the metal piece, or some scratches on the metal piece. And so Dino V2, it's a transformers model that was trained on a vast amount of data and that can generate embeddings, meaning a vectorial representation of an image that is given as an input, while capturing a lot of the details that are in this image and focusing on the relevant part of the image. And this can be done without any specific training. And our goal for today is to go from very generic usage of this model to more specific usage. And it starts with, at the top of the right part of the slides, with Dino V2 and its features, coupled simply with a nearest neighbor algorithm, which is a traditional algorithm that will, if you give it an element, try to associate its closest neighbor. Okay. And further on, we'll provide additional examples to our model by fine-tuning the Dino V2 with a small neural network at the end, a linear layer, to fine-tune the model. Okay. And so when doing this, what we start with is here the results of Dino V2 plus this nearest neighbor algorithm. And we see that with the embeddings directly, so we already obtain an F1 score, so a classification accuracy of 83%. Sorry. And so this can be considered as quite good, I mean, without any training. But all of this is really a question of perspective, because, for example, in an industry-specific context, 83% can be considered as very low. For example, if this metal PC is supposed to go on an airplane afterwards, I'm sure that you will not be confident at all of having a model that is reliable at 83%. Okay. And so this is why we need to input some additional specification. And this is what we did by pushing 200 examples, so curated labeled data, to fine-tune our model. And what we see is that by doing so, we're able to achieve a significant increase in terms of performance of our model, because we are above the 95%. And so this is great, but it's very theoretical. And so what we did for this one is that we provide you the possibility to do it yourself. So we did all this, okay, in a Colab notebook that is shared, okay, that has been shared in our GitHub, and that you can have access to, and it will reproduce all the steps that we did to happen to those results. So you see that you set up your project in Kili, okay? You will download the assets, be able to visualize them, compare the defect one and the non-defect ones, okay? Create a project in Kili to do the tagging if required. And later on, prepare your data set for further model training. We see here that we are downloading our model. We are, creating our strategy, so using transformer and then our classifier, then training our model on a certain number of iterations. So you have those 15 epochs here that will be used. And we see a decrease in our loss, so as in the end to have a trained, fine-tuned Dino model that can be used to do some predictions in Kili, okay? And then you will be able to analyze the quality of your results. You see, you have the same table as the one that I shared here. and continuing with the nearest neighbor strategy. So you have everything at hand so as to reproduce it on your end and do it yourself. But so while you will have the full possibility to do this later on, let's take a step back here and well, have a look at our conclusion, what we can learn from this. So first of all, the fact that when the tolerance to error is quite high, the foundation models can be used directly with 0 to very few shots to reach already an acceptable performance. So in that case, we reach more than 80%. We saw it in the webinar before, that on some given task, a GPT can be good. But for use cases with very low to no error tolerance, then in that case, specifying the model with very curated example can help it to reach significantly higher performance. And here, if we need more than this performance, we can even provide additional samples to see whether the model would perform. So now let's tackle the third part of this fine-tuning session, meaning what we had before on working in the embeddings space. So to introduce this section, we'll start from the basic, meaning what you see on the left, on how to leverage traditionally a large language model to generate a response. So in that case, as a user, you will do, push a query relying on a given prompt, push it to the model, which will generate a response, and you will have it. Okay. This has the limitation sometimes that Edouard described before. Among other, we know the limitation that it's been trained on not on most recent context, the fact that it's not industry specific, as we saw it before. And to tackle these points, we have the possibility to leverage retrieval augmented generation, so which is a way to enable to rely on external data source while using large language foundation models. And so this would follow the workflow that you see on the right. As a user, I will be running my query exactly like before, but this time the second step will be to run through a search, let's say, step, where we will look into relevant data source, so meaning any data source specific that you may have, and we will look for relevant context information. And when we have this relevant context information, we can add it to our query, couple it with our prompt to push this to the large language model and generate a response that is then enhanced with the context that we have added on our custom data sources. So this seems to be promising if, it enables to rely on external data sources. But then at that stage, let's imagine that this is still not enough, and that when doing this, your user receives a poor answer to his request. So in that case, he will push a negative feedback, etc. So in that situation, what could we do? And in that case, the first option would be to work on the traditional bricks that we know. So work, for example, on the prompting. In this, we could evaluate our prompt. We could manage the different templates that we have, try to do some iterate on, trying to change the template, add some few shots into our prompting so as to enable the model to learn a bit more on examples. Alternatively, we could work on the model, so what we discussed before, so evaluate the model with metric, compare different models, adjust potentially the parameters of the model, the temperature, etc., or specify the model as we saw it before. Okay. So this is it. This is the first step. But if this is still not enough, you see that here there is a brick that we didn't work on, and it's the search part. And so in this case, we can definitely work on this part. Basically, the search part, it works on the embeddings, actually. It relies on the embeddings, meaning the representation of the data, of the documents and information that we have. And it uses techniques to find similar records in this embedding space, typically using a cosine similarity search. Okay. And so the traditional way of doing it is to leverage generic embeddings to do so. But if this is not sufficient, these embeddings can be customized, fine-tuned with a traditional machine learning approach, where you would be doing some labeling, you would be training a given model, finding issues, potentially iterating on the best strategy, so as to have the best strategy in this option. And this is where, in elaborating this kind of strategy, where well, the correct labeling solution, enabling to label data correctly, but then find issues and correct them, like Kili, would enable to achieve, so as to have your best search function. So finally, the last step of our discussion here, after the adaptation of our model, the fine-tuning of our model, either through reinforcement learnings from general to specific, or relying on the embeddings, is the capability to handle the long tail, meaning discover error during the production process. And so to do so, there is the capability to rely on metrics in the production process, adding confidence that can be derived from the model to our workflow. And so for this, we did an internal study here at Kili, assessing the potential of use of the confidence score that can be extracted from the log probes of GPT. So the log probes being the log of the probability of the token that comes next. So comparing whether or not this element was a good indicator towards the accuracy and the confidence that we can have in a given model. And so what we assess is that whenever your confidence is high, you have a high confidence in the log probes, and whenever your confidence is low, you have a low log probe. Okay, so it can be a good representation of the accuracy that you will output. And so this can be directly leveraged in a labeling workflow, where you will be labeling automatically with a model like ChatGPT, and then pushing to manual review only the elements, the assets on which your model has a low, well, is outputted a low confidence metric. And this is actually what we did on the brand classification use case that I showcased at the very beginning of our talk here. And we see that next to our data, we inputted as a metadata our confidence metric that we see here. And so we can input a threshold. Yes, so I want to review only the elements that have the confidence above a given threshold or below a certain threshold, and assess that when leveraging this filter, I can only deep dive on the elements on which my model is disagreeing or agreeing. Okay, simply filtering like this, my confidence is below 84, then I see that I have only here the disagreements that I have with 50% consensus, meaning that my model and the ground truth do not agree. So that will be it for me on the strategies to mitigate those errors. And Edouard, I will give you back the mic.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes. So to conclude, foundation models, so either large language models or foundation models on images such as SAM do mistakes, especially on challenging complex scenes or domain-specific tasks, low contrast applications, where their capability to do reasoning which is its limitation. But the good news is that those models are fine-tunable. You can fine-tune them. You can improve their performance doing a bit of labeling, a bit of annotation. there are different strategies to implement this label data. Either you can use it to do downstream filtering, so meaning having a model filtering out the responses of the foundation model before they reach the end user or a downstream system. You can use your labels in the large language model itself, so in kind of a supervised way. And you can also use those labels to train a model on their embeddings. So you calculate the embeddings of a piece of text, for instance, and then you trained a model on the structured data of the embeddings for the given problem. And so binding a foundation model, such as a GPT or SAM and Kili, you can have a very, very powerful stack where you can create high quality data and then refine powerful models. And in that way, get the best of both worlds, so having high performance on a domain-specific tasks. If not already done, I invite you to sign up for the product and to test it with the Jupyter notebooks that we have prepared for you. If you want to get more information on how to automate your data labeling, so both to enhance the productivity and the quality, check out the webinar on this topic. If you are new on the large language model, I invite you to have a look at our introduction webinar on the topic that you can find on the website. And if you want to understand how you can improve the efficiency of your labeling with those foundation models, I invite you to have a look at this other webinar that we have on the topic. Now, if you have a few questions, to answer them. Don't hesitate. Okay.
So did we answer all of them? So I just answered one question regarding the confidence metric from Gérard, so stating the fact that we derived it from the log props of GPT.
Yes. Yes. So using the output of GPT, you can compute a confidence metric. So the confidence that the model itself has on its output. So you shouldn't trust it 100%. The model can do mistakes, even if being super sure of its answer. But if it has a low confidence, it can be an indicator of mistakes. Is it possible to do segmentation on, for instance, tire tracks with SAM and verify it automatically with so the separately training classification model? Do you want to take it, Jean?
So yes, so Alexis, so in that case, this could definitely be possible. Huh? You could even automate, the the segmentation at the top by using some so beforehand on the entire data set. And so later on, regarding the automation with a given classification model, this is something that could be automated so as to push for verification only the elements that doesn't seem to be in line with the majority of the other elements, let's say, and filtering out those ones to review them only on the given the correct labeling solution.
Okay, we had another question from Gautam. What is the search mechanism that is used? And can the data sources include internal company resources?
Yes, so on this one, so regarding the search mechanism, well, various ones can be used, but the traditional way of doing it with, well, in a vector space would be to use the cosine similarity to assess the similarity from one vector to the other. And it's regarding the second part, it's definitely exactly the point. So to typically include company, well, or industry specific, well, any external resources that can be shared so as to increase the specificity of the answer that you will get from it.
Okay, cool. But if you don't have any more question, thanks a lot. If questions come later on, feel free to contact us directly. First name dot last name at key-technology.com. Thanks a lot again for attending. It was a pleasure, a true pleasure to be with you. I hope you learned some things, and we will see you soon. In the meantime, don't forget that to create high quality and trustworthy AI, your best leverage is to label high quality data. Until it's done for that. Take care.